And it is a great honor and pleasure to have you join me in an interview with Bill Drayton. My name's Jill Vialet, and I am the founder and president of a nonprofit called Playworks, and I am also an Ashoka Fellow. And this is Bill Drayton, the founder of Ashoka, and a man who I'm going to ask deep probing questions of over the next 25 minutes. So welcome to Bill by Jill. So to start, especially for the folks who are out watching us in the cyber world, can you talk, we are here gathered because it's the 30th anniversary of Ashoka. Could you talk about kind of the initial founding of Ashoka and the biggest thing that surprises you about where you find yourself in this moment in time?
Well, I have to tell everyone that Jill refused to tell me her questions in advance. So, Ashoka started around a really simple idea. What's the most powerful force in the world? It's always a big pattern change idea, but only if it's in the hands of a really good entrepreneur. It's that combination that moves the world. And so what we have here are a good many of the people who are moving the world in North America. We've passed 100 Ashoka Fellows in the U.S. and 25 in Canada and edging towards 200 in Mexico out of 3,000 worldwide. And the power of a world community of the world's leading social entrepreneurs is really extraordinary. We do an evaluation at the end of each year, which we've, at the end of 5 years, every year. And the Corporate Executive Board just completed the most recent one a few months ago. And as has been true in every one of the years, over half of the Ashoka Fellows, leading social entrepreneurs, 5 years after they got started, have already changed national policy and 3/4 the pattern in their field. So we've just welcomed 20 new Ashoka Fellows from the U.S. and Canada here, and over half of them will have changed national policy in that time, over the next 5 years. Now, when you have 3,000 of those people around the world allied to key business entrepreneurs such as our founder friend Ron Anson, we have something really powerful. We can see the patterns, and this is what's really new and if not surprising, a little bit overwhelming in its power. If you can see the patterns among the work of the best entrepreneurs in any field, you can see where the field is going. And if you know where the field is going, then you can figure out how to get there. And through collaborative entrepreneurship, never been done before. The word entrepreneurship typically means one person upsetting everyone else. Well, what if you have several hundred of us working together to change how all kids grow up, or to get business and society to actually work together regularly, routinely? That's much more powerful, much, much more powerful. It's never been done before in the world, and that's the stage where we are at the moment. And this meeting, I've been participating in the track that's dealing with children and young people. We know what the new paradigm is. The old paradigm is you learn the world's wisdom and its rules. Well, that is a model that's okay when things don't change. But we live at a time when the rate of change is escalating so not logarithmically, exponentially. And the number of people causing change and the combinations of people causing change, all that's increasing faster and faster. And just knowing that the old knowledge and the old rules isn't enough. What we've all got to do now to help growing up is, and this is the new paradigm, every child, every young person must master a set of social skills: empathy, teamwork, leadership, change-making. These are all very complicated skills. They're all 100% learned. There's nothing genetic about them. To be a player, to be able to contribute in the world, you have to have those skills. If you don't have them, the knowledge is not going to do you much good because you're not going to be in the game. And if you do have them, then you're a lifelong learner, you're a happy, satisfied person. When you think about it from the point of view of a country, the US, Canada, Poland, India, any country that right now is not making this change with its young people is going to be crippled because it will not have the population with the skills to contribute to the rate of change and the richness of change that is going to define the world we're going to be in.
Well, so let me ask you about that. So when you're in the fellow interview process, one of the very first questions that we got sat down and asked first was that basically the interviewer takes you out and they say, okay, you were born, then what? Some version of that. So was there a moment that you can point to when the young Bill Drayton first showed his burgeoning signs of being a change maker? So go Bill Drayton, the boy. What was one of the first indications that you were going to totally tap into your unreasonable self?
I knew this was risky. I'm not going to sing, however.
Okay, I won't make you sing.
I was not particularly good at football. You can figure that out pretty quickly. And I really didn't understand why I was being made to memorize math and Latin and all these dreadful things that seemed completely useless. So I didn't really do that. So what do? You really want to be good at things. So I started changing things. Started newspapers, and then an inter-elementary school newspaper, and this was great fun. You got to organize people, and you learned a lot. And so that's one of the reasons that I just know that if you give that gift to any young person, the moment they have created something, they've had a dream, their idea, they build a team, they leave something changed, they know for the rest of their life that they're a powerful person. Now, we do all these interviews, and we do ask not only about what it was like when you were born, but who were your parents, and so on and so forth. And as a result, we really understand this relationship. And try it. You'll practically never find an entrepreneur, business or social, who didn't start something when they were in their teens. It's just absolutely predictive. Well, it's pretty obvious why. If you know that you have mastered the most important skills in society, you can have a dream, you can work with other people, social, emotional skills, being a good, ethical person, all rooted in the skill of empathy. You've mastered that. And then you leave middle school and you look back there and there's that tutoring service or the teen-to-teen counseling hotline. You did that, and it's ongoing. Well, how can anyone ever tell you you're not powerful after you've done that? What we would love to see is that every parent, whenever any young person in their life says, something's wrong, this is sort of crazy, they should say, well, what are you going to do about it? Well, I can't do anything. Well, maybe you can. And don't let people tell you you can't. That's something that every parent can do. We can also go to work on, what's wrong with schools that the adults say, we're in charge of everything. We run the class, we run the sports, so that's still there. We tightly control any remaining extracurricular activities. And by the way, we don't really allow people to do pickup baseball anymore because, that's not safe, and they've got to go and do their tutorials and this, that, or the other. Well, where are kids supposed to get this experience? There's something really wrong with this picture. Well, everyone can change that picture, and we just know from the life stories of the great entrepreneurs that were so privileged to be a part of this community. That was part of the gift we were given.
Okay, so now I want to get us into the road trip section of the questioning. And so I'm going to ask you a series of questions. And I'm not asking you for the favorite or the most favorite, just a favorite. And The key here is not to think too much. Okay, so a favorite book. I'm wondering about the road trip analogy for you, if maybe that didn't work so well. But I'm going to keep going with it. A favorite book.
It's a recent book about Genghis Khan, because I think it's one of those rare books that completely upsets everything you've always been taught. Genghis Khan upset the Chinese and the Indians and the Persians and the Russians, etc., and they all survived and have powerful states, and they've been writing history, and they've all said very bad things about Genghis Khan. Well, it turns out that he was one of the most tolerant, learning, incredibly brilliant people. He built this incredible structure that united all of Eurasia, basically, and he actively caused cross-fertilization of ideas and technologies between China and Persia, etc. It wasn't happening before. And, Francis...
This is the first time ever in my history of road tripping where Genghis Khan has come up. Or that in playing a game, Genghis Khan has been an answer to one of the potential questions. A favorite movie?
Well, right now there's this, I have a very wonderful 8-year-old friend, and he is exposing me to many films about dinosaurs. And I have recently seen this incredibly interesting film, which I didn't know this. There was a period when the mammals were first coming, and it wasn't so much the dinosaurs, it was these incredibly big, ugly birds that we were dodging. All of us in the social entrepreneur movement, we are the mammals, and there are a lot of these big, ugly birds out there.
I was thinking just like, a one-word answer. I was thinking up in the air, maybe 3 words. How many is up in the air? Yes, I was like, what, the movie's title?
Yes, well, I like that film, except the people I was...
Okay, all the answers now have to be in haiku format. That's 5 syllables, 7 syllables, and 5. No. Okay, one last one, and then I want to ask you one last. How about a favorite piece of music?
It's a wonderful place where Ravi Shankar and Ali Akbar Khan are playing off against one another. These are 2 very wonderful classical Indian musicians, and I just think it's brilliant.
Right. That was look. Okay, one more game, and then we'll go to longer didactic answers. How about don't think too much. You're throwing a dinner party, 5 people. You can invite them, living or dead, and you don't have to worry. Like if you bring Genghis Khan and Ann Richards, for some weird reason in that moment they get along okay that night. So 5 people, living or dead, that you would have to dinner.
Any random selection of Ashoka Fellows.
Oh, nice answer. Wow. You just see he hit that one right out of the park. That was great. So I wanted to ask you, one of the things that's been really enjoyable for me working with you is the way that you were very agnostic about the various sectors, that you really, having worked in the private sector, the public sector, and now really having such a huge leadership role in the citizen sector, you have sort of an agnostic view of the sectors in some ways. And I was wondering if you could point to any trends or innovations bubbling up in any one of the sectors or bubbling up in all 3 that you think are indicative of how their relationship is going to change, and if you were looking off into the future, where you see that going?
Finally, a question that I really love.
I try to humor you. We're coming back with your zodiac sign next. So.
Okay. We just live at this incredible moment in history where all the existing sectors have to redefine themselves, and all the traditional boundaries are collapsing. We've lived in a world where a few people run everyone else. And that's true whether it's government or the citizen sector or business or anywhere else. And that's a completely obsolete model that can't work. I already said, the rate of change is escalating exponentially. That is a model that presumes a static world. You know, a few people tell everyone else what to do. We use nice words now like manage everyone else, but it's the same thing. The assumption is that they're just going to do repetitive functions. Henry Ford sort of carried this to its logical extreme, but that's what we really mean when we say manage things. And it just won't work. The rate of change, I mean, any institution, any sector, 5-10 years from now is going to be surrounded on all sides by everything changing. And the game is how do we look at all this and say, oh, this change is going on. We could really contribute to that change. This is a different game. Now, that requires every institution to be a team of teams. Very open to very quickly getting together with other teams, locally, globally. That's why the NAT has been created recently, is basically to facilitate this. Now, a team does not mean someone telling everyone else what to do. It's an unbelievably radical and relatively new form of organization. Everyone takes initiative, but they're playing together to accomplish something in common. This is very different from the phalanx. It's very different from the way we run most things. A team of teams is just that on a bigger scale. Well, in a team, everyone has to be a player. And in a world where the contribution is about change, you have to, at least a good part of the time, be contributing to the change process. You have to be a change maker, which is why Ashoka's central goal is an everyone a change maker world. Well, now that affects business. It affects every sector. And where we're going is that the boundary lines between these sectors don't make sense. Every sector has to go through the same set of change in how we organize ourselves, what skills we bring. We have to individually be change makers. Leadership is about how do you help a team work together and think together, see where it's going. This is very different, and it's so different. This is actually wonderful. It's so different that it's one of the things that's going to end these traditional boundaries. Now, how do you have a global team of teams if you have some stupid historical division between business and society? We're different clothings. We don't like one another. I mean, we just inherited this from the past. Well, you can't collaborate easily across that sort of a division. So we need to tear it down to build this new world. And so of course, running a human rights organization is still going to be different from running a farm. But the interconnections will be more and more and the boundaries less and less.
In the same vein, I've heard you talking a lot about empathy lately, talking a lot about how empathy, in fact, I've heard you make the rather strong statement that empathy is the key skill that's going to help people not be marginalized. I think you say it more articulately than I did, but that's the essence of the statement. And I was wondering if there had been some kind of catalytic event that brought you to this place where empathy has come to take so much of your focus and attention.
Well, first of all, I just think it's so obvious when you stop to think about it. What causes marginalization? It's not that people can't learn computer science. People can learn any skill, basically. That is not what causes 25-30% of the world's people to be marginalized. It's a very complicated social skill, something we have to learn. The skill of empathy is really complex, and every year the level of that skill that's required is getting higher. Why? Because of that same curve. The faster things change, that means less and less of our life is covered by rules, and more we have to take the initiative. Taking the initiative means we're powerful, means we can do more damage as well as more good. Therefore, people won't tolerate it if you hurt them and you disrupt their organization, their society. They don't care if you've got Latin. For whatever, I've never figured out why I was made to do that. Computer science, that's more plausible, but they don't care. If you hurt them, you're out. Now, in this city, we all know that a very high proportion of the young African American males are in jail a portion of every year. This is not acceptable at all. Why is this happening? It is not, again, because I don't know computer science, it's because we have failed to make sure that every single citizen in this country, and the same thing is true for every other country, has mastered this set of skills. It's hard for people here to even begin to imagine what it's like not to be able to know that you're hurting people, not to have that fundamental skill. Now, when I was doing something appalling at home, I was asked, what do you think your sister felt when you were doing that? Well, I was being trained in empathetic skills, and that made it possible to then learn teamwork and leadership and change. If you don't have this, there's no way of getting to the other skills. I just think it's criminal. The only possible excuse is people don't know what they're doing. I think that to the degree that we do know, it's criminal to allow any young person not to master empathy. Now, Mary Gordon has made it very clear we can do this. In 10, 20 hours, children will grasp empathy. And Jill's work, recess. Well, what is this about? It's about group play. What is group play? That's when kids practice empathy. We know how to do this, but we've got to help society, everyone in society, understand that every child in every place in the world has got to master this skill. How many elementary school principals do you know that they are failing if they've got one second grader who has not grasped empathy and is not practicing it? It's not even in the discussion. Where is it in the ed school's curriculum? Now, that's part of our job. That's why we've been having meetings about empathy this morning. How do we know it's critical, we know what to do about it, now we've got to change society's awareness. And I suggest that's actually one of our major tasks.
So I want to shift gears a little bit. In your free time, you've also sit on the board. In fact, you've been chair of the board of Get America Working. And so I read the article in the MIT Journal to prepare for my interview today. No, I'd really read it otherwise. But anyway, I read it, and I was struck. And so my basic understanding of the premise is that you're suggesting that instead of taxing employment, the employees, that you tax raw materials. Can you tell me a story? I'm a factory owner in Washington, D.C. who builds telephone poles. Can you tell me how the change that you're proposing through Get America Working would affect me, and how does it play out?
I don't think they make telephone poles anymore.
It's made up. I made it up. I'm not really a factory owner of telephone poles.
So let me take farmers. That's nice, conventional.
Farmers.
Okay.
Farmers.
So right now, if you're a farmer, you don't really do composting because that takes a lot of labor. You buy chemicals, and you don't employ people for the summer because it's cheaper to buy a tractor and much less hassle. You don't have to fill out all this paperwork and Social Security and whatnot. Now, in this country, almost 40% of federal revenues come from payroll taxes, almost equal to income taxes. Now, if you mention in the economy that there's one key price signal, people versus things. That's the first choice the economy makes. We have driven up the cost of people because the payroll tax has gone from 1 to almost 40% of federal revenues. No one consciously decided to do that, but that means that we hire fewer people and also we consume more natural resources. So what we propose is very simple. Take off the payroll tax so the cost of labor goes down, which means the relative cost of things goes up, and compensate for that with a budget-neutral tax on things. So what that would do in our societies would change the relative price of people versus things by about 30%. That's worth about 40 million full-time jobs, full-time permanent jobs. There's no debt. The growth rate accelerates on a sustained basis. We're conserving natural resources. There's less dependency, which is very expensive for the person, the family, business, and government. There's a lot less social dysfunction. We know, for example, this is from insurance company data, that when you hold personality and prior health constant as much as you can, and you compare people who stop work and those who continue, those who stop work have 40 to 60% more days of paid by the health insurance companies, which is why they know this, costs. Well, there's a whole set of ill consequences that flow from this. To cause change, you've got to have an opportunity. Here's a big opportunity. You've got a tool. This is a price signal. It's very simple. It's totally acceptable to conservatives and liberals. You're not creating bureaucracies or corruption or delay. No choosing of winners or losers. So Malcolm Wallach and Bob Reich are both on our letterhead. And then the third thing, is it a political win? Well, of course it's a political win. Older people, people with disability, young people, women, minorities, immigrants, anyone who cares about any of the above, people who've been institutionalized, labor. How do you possibly push labor prices up when you've got a 40% overhang in the job market? We think there are about 80 to 85 million missing jobs, and full-time missing jobs in the U.S. So for the environment, obviously this is the best thing you could do for the environment. So we are, again, in the business of trying to change a framework of thinking. And that's the hard part.
I had two choices. I was either going to frame it as a question to see if, ask him to tell a story and see if I could get him that way, or I was going to say, if you were explaining this to my very well-read and I think quite, intelligent 11-year-old son, what would you say? Neither answer, I think, would have actually gotten me where I want to go. So I'm going to keep going, but it is a brilliant and fascinating article, and I highly recommend reading it. My last question. I think this room is actually tremendously familiar with your successes, but I was wondering if there has been a failure that has been particularly instructive for you.
Well, if you think, like any person or institution, we're learning, and you learn a lot by mistakes. More. So what Ashoka is trying to do is build one of the first everyone in entrepreneur organizations. We made a horrible mistake in the early 90s. We started having we went from a small number of countries to a very large number of countries in a short period, and so we created regional directors. And all of a sudden, we started having these strange symptoms, which were very uncomfortable. And I went and visited with Don Gogel, who's the head of Clayton, Dubilier and Price, and advises us on these sorts of things informally. And he usually sits and listens, and when he heard that we had regional directors, he went off on a tear, which was I've never seen him do before, for 5 minutes. Whenever we take over a company, the first thing we do is try to find if there are regional directors or anything that is like that, and we get rid of them immediately. And why? Well, because the only reality for that sort of a position is administrative. They're not dealing primarily with the people you're serving, and they're not the strategy group, so they think what they do is important, and they take it seriously, and then everyone who's dealing with the real people that you're trying to serve, they have to take this seriously, and that's their career path, and you got a whole foreign culture. Now, this is if you're an entrepreneur, you've got to stop listening to the big ugly bird dinosaurs. They always tell you to do like them. It doesn't work. That's where we make the mistakes, and we just stumbled into this because we sort of thought, well, you got all the span of control and all that, so you've got to have regional directors, and we created a whole anti-entrepreneurial culture around that management mistake. But we don't do that anymore. But it was very painful undoing it. It was part of the learning process, and I'm sure we'll make more.
With that, it's always good to actually end on something that is positive. Do you want to say a favorite accomplishment? Just one that just like stands out that you just makes you happy to wake up every day?
Well, I think what make can I just modify that
answer
slightly?
the question you're going to answer. Why would I even bother to think that I was going to get the last question?
I think all of us here are just in this incredible moment where we are so privileged to be able to contribute to the birth of an everyone a change-maker world. And of course it's messy, and there are the dinosaurs there, and they make our life difficult and confused. But we are here at the birth of the biggest change in the history of the world since the agricultural revolution. And we are central to that. That is an incredible privilege. That's the reason that our community is so important. The change makers need to hang together. We need to help multiply the change makers and build the institutions, make sure that every human being has the essential skills, empathy, teamwork, etc. Here is this incredible community. Everyone here and our colleagues all around the world, we get to understand it because of the work of all the people here. And we get to see the bigger patterns. And the opportunity to contribute to that history, I mean, I find it quite thrilling. And there hasn't been an opportunity like this for millennia.
Thank you for sharing it. Thanks so much.